and welcome to the very first episode of Liberty Flix Picks. And we have done Liberty movie reviews along with a news video in the past, but we're splitting it off just to avoid confusion. And we'll just discuss films that we've seen and how they relate to liberty and the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness as people in the United States and all over the world for that matter. So this week we saw a few different movies that pertain to liberty, and probably the most excellent and one that pertains the most to liberty is Marathon Man.
Of course, we'd seen it before. For me, it was a long time ago, and I didn't really remember much about the plot except for the scene about Dustin Hoffman being interrogated by this Nazi dentist. But it's a very artistic film, and a very unusual in that way for a thriller to be artistic. It does use stereotypes a lot in the way of the Nazis being the evil bad guy and him just having this love for these diamonds and money and no desire for people or any idea of truth in any way that motivates the bad guy. But one of the things that I think, in retrospect, this was a movie that was made around late 70s, right?
76, I think, yeah.
Yeah, 76. And one of the things that is quite clear in the movie is that there is a shadowy organization in the United States, which we would now know as the NSA, that they said they take the jobs that the CIA and the FBI wouldn't, and they play both sides. They openly say in this movie, and the character Roy Scheider is Dustin Hoffman's brother, plays a character that does this, and he is friends with this Nazi guy. So it's almost like the film industry is telling us, like they do in many different ways, yes, your government is siding with the Nazis, they're protecting them. And like we now know, Operation Paperclip brought these people into high positions of power. This doesn't show it at that level, but it, of course, in fiction format, reveals that the evil people are protected by our government. And that's a disturbing thing, but it's not even a main feature of the film. It just kind of comes out in the telling of the story. So if you look for opportunities in these things, you can see that they're actually windows into reality. And yes, the film is good, and watching films like this from the perspective of knowing so much more that we know now about the way things really work, it can be an interesting experience.
And we watched a film that we don't recommend. I believe the title is pronounced Obsoletia. And we'll do a little flash of how it's spelled so you can figure out for yourself how it's pronounced. This film, it looked like a nice, gentle, quiet relationship film, but sandwiched right in the middle, it's a sucker punch. All this false information is dumped about global warming and desertification, and how by the year 2100, 80% of the human population will be extinct due to global warming.
Oh, but that's a scientifically proven fact. This really smart guy that we know says so.
I think you're referring to Al Gore. He's a really smart guy.
Their big guy.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not just a sweet relationship movie as it might appear to be.
Now, some of the people that might not know us from earlier might, and this being a new channel and whatnot, I want to explain a little bit of my background in understanding global warming. I learned at the time of the breakup of the Soviet Union that the new vehicle for tyranny was going to be the environmental movement, and that did in fact happen. The leaders of the Communist Party took over the major global environmentalist groups, such as Greenpeace and blah blah blah, many of them. And I don't know the details of that, but the book that I read at that time was by a guy named Larry Abraham, and it documented that in detail because he had information that indicated that that's what was happening. So don't even bother to try to convince me that global warming is real. Hey, we've had times in the Middle Ages when there was more global warming and climate change than there is now, and there was not any carbon emissions issue at that time, unless you want to count people building fires. So this is just an opportunity for the scaremongers to try to get us to give our individual wills over to them so that they can enslave us, and we're not falling.
And we were just talking the other day about, maybe it was even yesterday, about pollution. It was because as we watched Marathon Man, they talk about air pollution, water pollution, so on and so forth. We heard those terms in the 70s and 80s. It was called pollution. And it did at that time refer to substances that genuinely are toxic and dangerous. Now the discussion has actually shifted away from toxic pollutants to carbon dioxide, which is not only naturally occurring, but absolutely necessary for all life on Earth. Plants take in carbon dioxide and emit oxygen. People take in oxygen and release carbon dioxide. So there's this great synchronous relationship between plants and animals, and it's carbon dioxide is really the foundation of it, along with oxygen.
Yeah, but that's a great example of how the films are used for propaganda, because that scene about the people on the bicycles protesting against pollution was not just something happenstance that found its way into that movie. It was put there to condition public that this is something that's a serious concern that we need to find the answer to. We need to hold businesses to account to be less polluting, etc. And it's on the backs of a public conscience that's manufactured in that way that the establishment gets their moral impetus to carry the ball into the territory that they use for their control. So they take a genuine concern, highlight it so that it gets sympathy, and then they hijack it years later. And of course, since the movie was made in 1976, we can see that with the whole perspective now. So that's another reason why sometimes it's good to go back and watch these movies if you have an understanding of what's going on now, to learn more about the propaganda process.
Excellent. And we watched a film called Fake that was an excellent drama. Did not receive very good reviews, but we I think we gave it 5 stars. It is a very good film, and it kind of exposes the deceit that occurs in the art world.
One of the facts that is given in that movie is that a third or more of artwork is forgery. And of course, the only type of artwork that would be forged is something from a known commodity, a recognized artist. So it even points out things like some of the early work of some of the famous masters were forgeries because they had to find a way to market their stuff. And they also point out that neither the art dealers nor the artists themselves really want to expose this fraud because it feeds their whole industry. And if something is in demand, it just fuels that demand. unless, of course, the forgeries are very bad. But the people that are the good artists can often begin a career that way. So that's the storyline. Somebody with a great deal of talent is really upset because somebody who has inferior talent is getting the attention. So he has the full ability to copy his work. And he doesn't paint. He just paints in his style. He doesn't at first copy the actual paintings. Just paints in his style, and people love it. And so that's how he starts out, and then gradually it gets worse, and he becomes a captive to crank out these, as he puts it, he becomes a human Xerox machine to produce things that are substituted within famous art galleries, etc. So it's really an interesting window into the art world, and it's also a good relationship movie because the person who he knew in art school, who is his fiancée, has become an art critic, and she differs with him about this whole thing that he starts out on, and later becomes instrumental into how the situation is resolved. Don't want to give away any more than that, but we really enjoyed Fake.
Excellent film. And you kind of touched on the issue of copying, and that's related to the idea of copyright. The whole idea of copywriting materials was to control the free flow of information. We always think that, protect the artist. Well, if you look at the music world, for example, the artists in that world receive a very small portion of the fruits of their labors. It's all the record companies, and this can change now with people able to produce their own music, but copyright is not really about protecting artists.
Well, no, that's just true. There really is more protection for the system than there is for creativity. It blocks, and it's also being used to control the internet. So they totally use it as a fake reason to shut down sites. There's copyright material on it. We've even had Cindy puts on music that's not copyright onto videos, and sometimes it gets flagged through its automated processes as being copyrighted music. It's not, but the system flags it that way. It's just an excuse for control. It's just an excuse to limit your exposure so that they can control you.